ASTI collects data in local currency units. So all the information it collects in Kenya is collected in Kenyan shillings, and all the information it collects in Mali is collected in CFA francs. But in order to make international comparisons, we need an international yardstick that actually allows us to compare investment levels across countries. But comparing economic data across country is challenging, and it's a highly complex process because of the important differences that exist in price levels across countries. So for example, $100 in a country like Ethiopia with relatively low price levels buys you a lot more than the same amount of money, $100, would buy you in the United States. And therefore it's really important to take differences in purchasing power across country into account when you actually look at agriculture research expenditure data, simply because the majority or the bulk of agriculture research expenditure data is the type of investments that is not traded internationally. So you cannot just simply use a US dollar to compare investment levels across countries. That's why ASTI has chosen to use purchasing power parity dollars, or PPP dollars, and PPP exchange rates are collected annually by the World Bank and really reflect the purchasing power of countries and are based on a very wide basket of goods and services in each country. So these purchasing power parity exchange rates really reflect the purchasing power of countries much better than do the market exchange rates. Okay, then another important thing to take into account is that ASTI collects long-term time series data when it comes to agricultural research investments. But the problem with long-term time series data is inflation. $1,000 today buys you a lot less than $1,000 would have bought you 20 or 30 years ago. So therefore it's very important when analyzing time series data is to correct for high levels of inflation. Now, for example, in certain countries we see that when expressed in local currency units, we might see a huge increase in the agricultural research expenditures over time. But if you don't take inflation into account, this might be very misleading, because some of these countries might have actually experienced very high levels of inflation. And what we see in certain countries is that if we actually do correct for these high levels of inflation, this very impressive growth is actually a lot less impressive, so it's very important to correct for inflation when comparing financial data over a longer period of time.